This whole story feels like something you'd only see in a wild movie. It's hard to believe it's real. I was married for over 3 decades, and I thought my life was pretty good. I had 3 kids I adored, and I ran a small convenience store with a gas station attached. We weren't wealthy, but we managed just fine. A few years back, my 28-year-old son, Mark, ended up in the hospital with a serious kidney issue. Mark's married with 2 little ones, and my wife, Katie, though I usually called her Kate, and I were beyond scared. The doctors warned us that if things didn't improve soon, Mark might need a transplant. They suggested we ask family members to get tested, just in case. Without telling Kate, I went ahead and got tested myself. When the results came back, I wasn't a match, and that absolutely stunned me. I asked the doctor why that would be, since Mark was my son. The doctor looked a bit uneasy and asked me to step into his office. "Mr. Miller, the test shows you're not Mark's biological father. We're running the tests again to confirm," he said. I was completely floored. How was I supposed to tell Kate? I started to question everything. What about my 2 daughters, Emma and Rachel? Were they even mine? A couple of days later, we got some good news at least. Mark's kidneys were improving, and it looked like he wouldn't need a transplant after all. Everyone was thrilled, but I still hadn't shared the bombshell I'd just learned with Kate. The next day, I told her, Emma, and Rachel that they should all get tested too, just in case, for future health reasons. Kate seemed nervous but went along with it, and the girls didn't question it. I even collected samples from Emma's husband and their kids, trying to cover all my bases. Not long after, the hospital confirmed what I had been dreading: Mark wasn't biologically mine. I asked them to test the girls as well. "Mr. Miller," they asked me, "are any of them your family?" "They're all my family," I replied, "but I need to know if Emma and Rachel are my biological daughters." A few days later, Mark came home from the hospital. He bounced back quickly, and before long, things started to return to normal for everyone, except me. I just couldn't shake the thought of those results. I had to know for sure. Kate started noticing how off I was acting and would ask me almost every night what was bothering me. I'd tell her I was just thinking about the kids, which wasn't exactly a lie. Then, one evening, I came home to find her sitting at the kitchen table, tears running down her face, with some hospital papers laid out in front of her. "When did you do this?" "Why?" she asked, visibly shaken. "I got tested to see if I could donate to Mark," I told her. "The doctor said I'm not his biological father. So, I had the girls tested too." Kate broke down in sobs. "Emma isn't yours, but Rachel is," she admitted. "I'm so sorry, Sam. What happens now?" I felt completely numb. 30 years of marriage, and now I'm finding out that 2 of my kids aren't even mine. "We need to talk," I said. "Maybe we'll stay together, or maybe we won't." "Sam, that was almost 30 years ago. Can't we just move on and leave it in the past?" "No, we can't," I snapped. "You had an affair. I need to know who I've been raising. Mark and Emma are siblings, so this wasn't just a one-time thing." "Who was it with?" "It was Dan," she confessed. "It was a mistake, but it's over." "Dan? Our best friend who died 25 years ago. Did Sarah know? Was she part of this too?" "Please, Sam, don't dredge this up. I love you. This is ancient history. Can't we move on?" "Move on?" I shouted. "We got married, and within a year, you were sleeping with Dan. I raised his child. If he hadn't died, you'd probably still be with him." She cried harder, but I wasn't done. "I always loved him, but he chose Sarah," she admitted. "I loved you too, just not in the same way. When Dan married her, I felt lost. Then you proposed to me, and I said yes, partly out of spite, I guess. But after we got married, Dan and I started the affair. You were gone a lot, and Dan would come by. It just happened. He stopped coming around after I got pregnant with Mark. He asked if the baby was his, and I said I wasn't sure. I wasn't going to tell you unless he left Sarah. He just laughed and said I could go ahead and raise his child. I couldn't wrap my head around what I was hearing. You really expect me to believe that it just happened? And what about Rachel? Did that just happen, too? I demanded. I told him not to come over unless you or Sarah were home, but one day, he forced himself on me. He said if I didn't, he'd tell you about Mark. I didn't know what else to do. After Rachel was born, Dan died in that car accident, and honestly, I felt a kind of relief. I didn't have to deal with him anymore. I could focus on us, on our family. Katie, I really started to love you more and more over time. Didn't we have a good life together? Yeah, sure, our marriage was fine, I said, my voice cold as ice, but now I see it was all built on lies. You cheated on me and created this life while loving someone else. I can't just pretend that never happened. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself under the weight of everything that had just come crashing down on me. I'm going to see a lawyer and file for divorce. Sam, you can't, she cried out, her voice breaking. What about the kids? What are we going to tell them? You can tell them, I replied, my anger boiling just beneath the surface. And just so you know, I don't buy for 1 second that Dan forced you. If he were still alive, you'd be with him right now. I'm giving you 1 week to come clean and tell me everything. After that, I'll be the one telling the kids the truth. I'm assuming Mark and Rachel have no idea I'm not their father. No, she whispered, barely audible. No one knows but us. I am their father, I said, my voice firm. I raised them, and that's not going to change. But we're done, Kate. I'll stay here until the divorce is finalized unless, of course, you've got someone else lined up. That's not fair, Sam, she sobbed. What's unfair, I shot back, is that I've spent 30 years living with a woman I don't even know. With that, I turned and gathered my things, moving into the guest room while she wept behind me. 2 days later, I got a phone call from the store. Kate had been in a car accident. She was speeding, missed a curve, and crashed. She died on impact. The sheriff looked into it, checking for any suspicious circumstances, but I told them there weren't any. They classified it as an accident, pending the autopsy results. Breaking the news to my kids about their mother's death was one of the hardest things I've ever done, and it stirred up even more doubts in my mind. Was it really just an accident, or could something darker have been at play? A few days later, the autopsy confirmed it was, in fact, an accident. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something didn't add up. At the funeral, despite everything, I found myself mourning deeply. 30 years together leaves a mark that doesn't just disappear, and I was wrestling with emotions I hadn't even fully processed yet. I decided to keep her affair a secret, fighting the urge to run to my lawyer. The day after the funeral, I asked my daughters and daughter-in-law to go through Kate's things and decide what to keep. I held on to a few family photos for myself, but other than that, I let them take care of the rest. Even so, I couldn't stop the endless stream of what-ifs running through my mind. I wondered if things could have gone differently, or if fate had intervened in some twisted way. This all took place 2 years ago, right before the holidays. Since then, I've found myself mostly alone. My son and oldest daughter live about 100 miles away, and I told them I'd visit for a couple of days. Rachel, my youngest, was in her last year of college and planning a trip to England with some friends over the holidays. She was worried about me being alone, but I reassured her that I'd been managing just fine. I spent most of my time at the service station, so I was never really by myself. One day, while watching TV, I saw one of those ads asking for $24 a month to help kids in third world countries. It got me thinking, where does that money really go? The next day, I went down to see Pastor Dave at our local church and asked if they had any programs to help families in need around here. He said they did and asked if I had a particular family in mind. "No, I don't," I replied. "Just give me the name of a family I can help." Dave told me about a young widow with 3 kids. Her husband had been killed, and she'd moved to our town looking for a fresh start. "Thanks, Dave. I'll stop by later to get the details." I wasn't what you'd call a regular churchgoer, but I wanted to do something meaningful. I took her name off the church's giving tree, Nina Robinson. I knew her name. She worked at Frank's Diner, a place I found myself eating at pretty often. I decided it was time to swing by and chat with her in person. At Frank's Diner, I spotted Nina, a woman in her early 30s with shoulder-length dark hair, not too slim, not too heavy, just a pleasant, approachable look. She smiled warmly as she noticed me and said she'd be over in a minute. "What can I get you?" she asked. "Just a cup of coffee and maybe some conversation, if you don't mind," I replied. "Coffee, sure. Conversation? We'll see," she joked with a soft laugh. I fumbled a bit, trying to explain myself. "Look, I'm not great at talking to women, and just to be clear, this isn't me hitting on you. I picked your name from the church's giving tree and wanted to see if I could help out during the holidays." She gave me a puzzled look. "I'm not sure what you mean by holiday friend, but let me get your coffee first." After a brief chat with Frank, the owner, she came back over. "Okay, Frank says you're all right. I just wanted to make sure since, well, I get hit on a lot here, and I really don't need that. So what exactly is this holiday friend thing you're talking about?" "The church never mentioned it. It's just something I decided to do," I explained. "I saw one of those ads on TV, you know, the ones asking people to donate to kids overseas, and it got me thinking. I'd rather help a local family this Thanksgiving and Christmas. I'm not rich, but I can contribute a little, and I chose your family." Her eyes welled up with tears, and she seemed genuinely surprised. "Are you serious? I've been so worried about how I'm going to take care of my kids this year. My husband, well, you probably know." "Yeah, Nina. I know. He was murdered. Please, let me help you out. If I'm overstepping, just say the word, and I'll back off." "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice full of confusion. "Don't you have your own family to take care of?" "My wife passed away 2 years ago in a car accident," I said quietly. "Holidays have been tough since then, and I figured I could make someone else's better. My kids are grown and doing fine. So, what do you say? Can we be holiday friends?" She looked at me for a long moment before finally speaking. "You've got a kind face, Sam. For my kid's sake, I'll say yes. But no tricks, okay? We've been through a lot. No tricks. I promise," I assured her. "Let's start by figuring out what you need." The next day, I asked her if I could take her out to dinner, but she said she needed to be home with the kids. Instead, she invited me over for pizza. "Pepperoni and cheese, all right?" I asked. "That's perfect, but you might want to bring 2. My 8-year-old can easily eat half of one by himself," she said with a laugh. When I arrived at her apartment, it was clear she lived in one of those rough housing projects where trouble seemed to lurk around every corner, whether it was drugs or some other problem. It only made me want to help her even more. Her son, an energetic 8-year-old, opened the door with a huge grin. "Are you the pizza guy?" "Yeah," I said, smiling back. "Your mom invited me over." "Mom said her friend was bringing pizza today," he exclaimed. "We don't get pizza from the store that often." Soon, his 2 younger siblings came running in, a 6-year-old boy and a little 4-year-old girl, both shouting, "Pizza! Pizza!" Nina appeared from another room, looking a bit flustered but still smiling. "Kids, where are your manners?" "Sorry, Mom," her oldest replied. We just don't get visitors much. Can we have the pizza now? Kids, this is Sam. He's a friend of mine. You can call him Uncle Sam or Mr. Sam. Just call me Sam, I interrupted with a chuckle. What's your name, buddy? I'm Ethan, and I'm 8, the boy said proudly. That's my brother, Noah, and my little sister, Lily. We all sat down to enjoy the pizza together. Their furniture was old and worn, and their TV barely worked, but the kids were so full of energy and excitement that it didn't seem to matter. While they were glued to cartoons, I quietly asked Nina what kind of help she really needed. Oh my God, I wasn't ready for this, Nina admitted. The kids and I get by, but they see other kids with things I just can't afford to get them. You've seen our TV, it's barely holding on. We get our clothes secondhand, and while my kids are wonderful, I can't buy them things like bikes because they might get stolen. Anything you can do to help would mean a lot. Okay. I'll see what I can do, I told her. How about I take Ethan to the movies this Saturday? There's a new Harry Potter movie out, I said, watching as Ethan's face lit up with excitement. Wow, Mom, can we go? He asked, practically bouncing in his seat. We'll see if you behave this week, Nina replied, smiling at her son. And Nina, you're coming with us, I added. We can grab some McDonald's afterward. Lily perked up at the mention of McDonald's. I like McDonald's. They have Happy Meals. All right, Lily, I said with a grin. Be good, and we'll make it happen. The kids were over the moon, and I noticed that Nina was smiling too. It felt great to make them happy. From that point on, our weekends were spent together, visiting fun places. I even started eating lunch at Frank's more often, always making sure to sit in Nina's section and leaving her generous tips. Tom, you don't need to leave such big tips. Just make my kids happy, she said, a little embarrassed. So, you don't need the extra money? I teased, knowing the answer. That's not fair, she laughed. I could definitely use the money, but it makes me feel awkward, like I owe you something. Can I at least make you a Thanksgiving dinner or something? I need to do something for you. Nina, I replied, I do this because it brings me happiness. Helping people who are trying to help themselves is a great feeling. You don't owe me a thing. Seeing the joy on your kids' faces is all the thanks I need. Your smile is just a bonus. She blushed slightly and turned away, flustered by the compliment. When my daughter Sarah came home one weekend, she asked me what was new. I told her about Nina and how I'd been helping her and her kids. Dad, are you sure this is a good idea? Sarah asked, a bit skeptical. You don't really know her. Sweetheart, seeing those kids' faces gives me a renewed sense of purpose, I said. I want you to meet Nina and tell me what you think. I don't know, Dad, Sarah said hesitantly. That's a pretty rough neighborhood for a single mom. Exactly, I pointed out. That's why I want to help. You've grown up, and you don't need me as much anymore. I need to help someone who does. Eventually, Sarah agreed to meet them. That Saturday, I invited Nina and her kids over to the house. When they pulled up in an old, beat-up car, Sarah couldn't resist making a sarcastic comment. Nice car, Dad. I chuckled. What would you say if she drove up in a brand new one? Good point, she said with a smile. Ethan and Noah hopped out of the car and ran up to me, eyes wide with amazement at the size of the house. Uncle Tom, this place is huge, they exclaimed. I laughed and introduced them to Sarah as Nina helped Lily out of the car. Lily was shy at first but quickly warmed up. This is my daughter Sarah, I told them. She used to boss me around just like you do with your brothers, Lily. Nina and Sarah exchanged friendly smiles, though I could see they were quietly sizing each other up. I know this is all new for everyone, Nina said, but let's just enjoy the day. I'll do my best to answer any questions you might have. Your father is one of the kindest people I've ever met. As the kids wandered around the house, exploring every corner, Nina joined Sarah and me in the kitchen. Men think grilling counts as a full meal, but we know better, don't we? Nina joked. Sarah laughed, already starting to warm up to her. I like her, Dad, she whispered to me when Nina stepped away for a moment. The kids had an absolute blast that day, and we ended the evening with a movie. Lily insisted on watching The Little Mermaid and made it very clear that the boys could join only if they stayed quiet. She played her big sister role like a pro. After that, Thanksgiving became a major event at my house. Nina and Sarah planned out the entire meal, and my job was to keep the kids entertained. Sarah even reached out to Mark and Rachel, inviting them to join us and to bring swimsuits for the hot tub. At first, they were a little hesitant, but their curiosity about my involvement with Nina's family, through the church initiative, eventually won them over. As the weeks went by, Nina and Sarah worked together seamlessly. Sarah began coming home every weekend, and I made it a habit to stop by Frank's for lunch. I also started visiting Nina's apartment more often, bringing little treats for the kids and spending time with them. It warmed my heart to see how happy they were, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a deep connection again. One day, Sarah, ever the observant one, pulled me aside for a private chat. Dad, Nina's really sweet, and I get why you're helping her, but I think she cares about you. Probably more than you realize. I raised an eyebrow. She didn't actually say that, did she? No, Dad. She didn't have to. Women can pick up on these things, Sarah said, giving me a knowing look. And if I'm being honest, I think you've fallen for her too. Her words hit me harder than I expected. Was I really falling for Nina? Or was it just the comfort that came from helping someone in need? Either way, I knew one thing for certain, this was the happiest I'd been since Kate passed away. Nina often teased me about spoiling her kids, and I couldn't help but laugh along. There were moments, though, when I felt a little uneasy seeing her interact with some of the customers at Frank's, especially the men who flirted with her. But I knew I had no right to feel jealous. Thanksgiving morning came, and Nina showed up with her kids bright and early. She looked lovely, even in a simple outfit, and soon she and Sarah were busy in the kitchen together. Sarah mentioned that she'd invited her boyfriend, Ryan, a paramedic still in college, to join us before their trip to England for a hospital project. Jake, along with his wife Holly and their kids, arrived not long after, and the first thing the grandkids asked about was the hot tub. I introduced them to Nina's children, and they all hit it off right away. Sarah introduced Nina to Jake and Holly as a good friend, which made me happy. Jake seemed curious about her, and Holly offered to help out in the kitchen. Soon, Emily and her husband Adam arrived with their kids, who quickly joined the others downstairs to play. While the women were cooking, the men made themselves scarce, trying not to get in the way. Jake and Adam, though, couldn't help but ask me about Nina. She looks great, Dad. Is she around my age? Jake asked. She's 31, I replied. She's been through a lot, and she deserves a little help. Adam, always the joker, chimed in. Aren't you worried she might fall in love with you? Or you with her? I'm a widower, and she's a widow, I said with a shrug. If something happens, it happens. But I haven't even kissed her. Sorry, Dad, Jake said, realizing he'd hit a sensitive spot. I didn't mean to pry. I know it's none of my business. I guess, you just must miss Mom. This has nothing to do with your mother, I said, trying to steer the conversation away. I'm still alive, and if I feel drawn to someone, that's my decision. Later, we went downstairs to check on the kids, who were having the time of their lives. Little Lily kept running up to talk to me, and I noticed it bothered Jake, though Adam seemed to think she was adorable. Sarah eventually came down with Ryan to introduce him to everyone, and after some quick greetings, Ryan joined our conversation. I met Nina. She's really nice, Ryan said. Sarah told me about what happened to her husband. I nodded and introduced Ryan to Nina's kids. "They're good kids," he remarked. "It's great that you're helping them, Mr. Miller." "Thanks, Ryan." "So, how are things going between you and Sarah?" Jake asked, clearly interested. "I love her," Ryan said without hesitation. "I'm planning to propose in front of Big Ben when we're in England." "Mr. Miller, do I have your permission?" "Ryan, you don't need my permission," I replied with a chuckle. "Sarah's perfectly capable of making her own decisions, but you've got my blessing." The rest of the day went off without a hitch. Everyone had a great time, and the kids took turns in the hot tub, though none of the adults decided to join them. "Maybe next time," Nina said with a playful smile, and I made a mental note to hold her to that. As the evening wound down, Sarah and Ryan left to enjoy some time together. I stayed behind to help Nina clean up while Emily and Holly pitched in as well. Jake told Nina it had been nice meeting her and wished her the best before he and his family headed out. After most of the guests had gone, Emily pulled me aside. "Dad, Nina's great, but she's too young for you." "I'm just helping her out, Emily," I replied. "No, Dad. She loves you." We asked if she was seeing anyone, and you know what she said? "That she has a boyfriend. That boyfriend is you." After everyone had left, Nina gathered her kids and walked over to me. "I had a great time, Tom. I really like your family," she said with a soft smile. Something came over me in that moment, and before I knew it, I leaned in and kissed her. It was gentle, lingering just long enough for me to feel the weight of what was happening. When we finally pulled away, her eyes filled with tears. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered, her voice shaky. I have to go." She quickly gathered her kids and hurried out the door. Feeling regret wash over me, I followed her to the car. As she rolled down the window, I apologized. "I'm really sorry, Nina. I crossed a line. Please forgive me." "The problem, Tom," she said, her voice catching, "is that I've wanted you to do that for a long time." She gave me one last look before driving away. For the next few days, I didn't hear from her, and I couldn't stop worrying about what I'd done. On Monday, I went to the restaurant, but Nina wasn't there. Frank told me she'd had to drop Lily off at daycare and would be back later. I planned to stop by again at lunchtime, but work got in the way, and I ended up covering a shift. That evening, my phone rang. It was Nina. "Hi, Nina. I'm so sorry about the other day," I began, but she cut me off before I could say more. "Tom," she sobbed, "our apartment was broken into. They took everything. The TV, the kids' toys, all we have left are our clothes. I don't know what to do." "That's terrible," I said, my heart sinking. "Nina, pack up your things and get the kids ready. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Everything will be okay." I didn't know who else to call, she said, her voice trembling with fear. "It's all right, Nina. I'm glad you called me. Just get packed. I'm on my way." When I arrived, I found Nina and the kids huddled together, clearly shaken. Little Lily was crying, and I did my best to comfort her. I knew there was only one thing to do. "You're coming to my house tonight," I said firmly. Nina looked surprised. "I thought you were taking us to a motel for the night." "No, you're staying with me," I insisted. "Pack your things, take my car with the kids, and I'll drive yours." She didn't argue. She simply did as I asked. After speaking to the police and giving them my contact information, I explained that Nina and her kids would be staying with me for a while. The officer mentioned it was unlikely they'd recover any of the stolen items, and I could see the weight of that news hit Nina hard. With the help of the officer, we got Nina's car started, and I drove it back to my house. When I arrived, Nina and the kids were standing on the porch, waiting. "The door's open. Why didn't you go inside?" I asked. "You weren't here," Nina said softly. We didn't want to just walk in. Come on, boys, I called out. Help me with the bags. Ethan and Noah ran to help, and I directed them to put their things in the room with the bunk beds. Take Lily's and your mom's stuff to the front bedroom. If you're not sure where something goes, just leave it in the living room. Turning to Nina, I said, we need to talk. Tom, we can't live here, she replied, her voice full of uncertainty. What will your kids think? Nina, you need help right now. Let's just try this for a few days. You and Lily can share the front bedroom, and the boys will be comfortable upstairs. It'll work out. But the boys have school, and Lily's in kindergarten. I have work. How's this going to work? She asked, clearly anxious. We'll manage, I reassured her. You might have to leave a little earlier, but I can help with the school runs. Call their schools and add my name for pickups. Her expression softened, and she looked at me with a mix of gratitude and worry. I care about you, Tom. A lot. And your kids know it. I can't hide that. Sarah, Emily, and Holly know too. I'm not sorry I kissed you, I said quietly. Just thought you should know. I headed upstairs to make sure the boys' room was ready while Nina helped them unpack their things. Lily and I worked on clearing out the dresser in her room. Once everyone was settled in, Lily asked if she could organize her things on her own, and I left her to it. While Nina finished unpacking, I took the boys to the kitchen to make dinner, hot dogs and mac and cheese, nothing fancy, but something they'd enjoy. During the meal, Nina asked about house rules. We'll figure them out as we go, I said. But for now, the kids need permission for just about everything. No going into my room or office without asking, and stay away from the pool. The hot tub's okay with permission, and TV's fine as long as you ask first. And keeping their rooms clean. That's their job. Nina chuckled, knowing her boys weren't exactly neat freaks. At least the rules are clear, she said with a smile. I looked around the table at the kids, then back at her. This is your home now. Have fun, but if you're unsure about something, ask your mom. Ethan raised his hand like he was in school, making me chuckle. Uncle Tom, what if we get hungry? Then eat, I replied with a grin. Tomorrow, your mom and I will pick up some snacks. You'll always have food here. But remember, your mom is in charge. If she says no, don't come asking me. Lily, in her quiet voice, asked, can we play with the toys in the basement? Of course, I said, smiling at her. And don't worry, we'll have a talk with Santa. I bet he'll bring you some toys of your own. Lily beamed. Can I go play now? Go ahead, Nina said, and Lily ran off, the boys right behind her, shouting, Uncle Tom, can we turn on the TV? Yes, just keep it down, I called after them. Nina hugged me then, tears welling up in her eyes. I don't know what I would have done without you. I squeezed her hands gently. You don't have to worry. I'll always be here for you. I gave her a reassuring smile. Now, let's go check on the kids. We joined them in the basement, and for a moment, it felt like a real family. It reminded me of those times when Lori and I used to watch our kids play, the house filled with laughter and energy. As the night drew to a close, Nina got the kids ready for bed. The boys used the upstairs bathroom, while I offered Lily the main one. This is your home now, I told her. You can use whatever you need. After tucking the kids in, I went to my office to get some work done. A little while later, Lily peeked into the room, dressed in her nightgown. Hi, Lily. Do you need something? I wanted to kiss you goodnight, she said shyly, but Mom told me I have to wait until you say it's okay. I smiled warmly. Come here, sweetheart. She climbed up into my lap, gave me a hug, and kissed me on the cheek. Good night, Uncle Tom. Good night, sweetie. Sleep well. Where's your mom? She's upstairs, arguing with Ethan and Noah. I took Lily's hand and headed upstairs, finding Nina in the middle of a dispute between the boys. But, Mom, Ethan always gets the top bunk because he's older. Noah complained. Nina turned to Ethan. Is that what you said? Yeah, but I'm older, so I should get to pick, Ethan muttered. Ethan, Nina said patiently, you're 2 years older, which means you should be 2 years smarter. Is this really worth fighting over? Ethan let out a long sigh. Fine. Noah, you can have the top bunk this month. We'll switch every month, okay? Noah's face lit up. Thanks, Ethan. See? Nina said. You feel good inside, don't you? Yeah, I guess, Ethan mumbled. Nina kissed both boys goodnight, then tucked in Lily. I need to finish up some work myself, she said, heading to her room. I went back to my office, but later, I heard the shower running upstairs. When Nina emerged, her hair was still damp, and she was in a nightgown and robe. She paused at my door. Good night, Tom. Thanks for everything. I couldn't help but smile. Is there anything you don't look good in? She blushed, whispered a soft good night, and disappeared into her room, her scent lingering in the air as I tried to refocus on my work. The next morning was a whirlwind of activity. Nina asked me to call Frank to let him know she might be late to the diner. She needed to update the school and daycare with her new address. When I called Frank, he sounded a little worried. Tom, are you serious about Nina? He asked. She's been through a lot. Don't hurt her. I would never hurt her or the kids, I reassured him. They're safe with me. Later that morning, Ethan and Noah rode with me in the truck, while Nina followed behind in her car with Lily. When we got back, Nina received a call from Sarah. After catching her up on everything that had happened, Sarah asked to speak to me. Dad, are you sure about this? She asked. You know she loves you, right? What was I supposed to do, Sarah? Just hand her some money and tell her to figure it out on her own. I care about her. We're both adults, and there's nothing wrong with her staying here. Honestly, it almost feels like the good old days. Dad, I understand, she said, her tone softening. But it's a fine line. I like Nina as a sister, but you two need to be clear about what's going on between you. I handed the phone back to Nina, and she and Sarah talked for another 20 minutes while the boys and I finished unloading the truck. Once she hung up, I asked Nina, what did Sarah say after I gave her the phone? Nina smiled. Mostly girl talk, but she's worried about us. What's there to worry about? I asked. We're both adults. I'm in my 50s. I can make my own decisions. Tom, she said, her voice gentle, Sarah knows how much I care about you. I told her myself, and now I'm telling you. My feelings for you, they're stronger than just gratitude. I looked at her, trying to process what she was saying. Okay, Nina. Let's just take it one day at a time. We'll figure it out, I said, just as Ethan and Noah came bounding into the room. Uncle Tom, can we go in the hot tub? Ethan asked eagerly. Only if your mom joins you, I replied. You can't go in there by yourselves. Come on, Mom, please, the boys begged in unison. Nina sighed, giving in. All right, boys, go get your swimsuits. Lily, grab yours too, she said, turning to me with a knowing smile. You set me up, didn't you? I grinned mischievously. I have no idea what you're talking about. A few minutes later, Nina walked past me in a two-piece swimsuit, smiling playfully. Happy now? She asked with a wink. You look great in everything, I teased. But I'm willing to bet you'd look even better without the clothes. Creep, she laughed, heading to the hot tub with the kids. Later, after everyone had settled into the bubbling water, I handed Nina a drink. The water feels incredible, she said, smiling contentedly. My body needed this. The kids were busy splashing around, fascinated by the bubbles. "Thanks, Uncle Tom. This is awesome," Ethan exclaimed. I smiled, stealing one last glance at Nina, appreciating how beautiful she looked. Then I headed back inside to finish some paperwork. That night, Lily peeked into my office, waiting at the door. "Hi, Lily. Do you need something?" I asked, glancing up from my desk. "I wanted to kiss you goodnight, but Mom said I have to ask first," she said sweetly. "Come on in, sweetheart." She climbed into my lap, hugged me tight, and kissed my cheek. "Good night, Uncle Tom. See you in the morning." The next day, Nina called me, frustrated that her car wouldn't start again. I grabbed the tow truck and headed to the diner to pick her up. When I got there, I saw two guys trying to help her, but it was clear they were more interested in flirting than fixing her car. She turned them down, saying her friend was on the way. When I pulled up, they backed off quickly. "I'll take it from here, fellas," I said, making them nervous as they shuffled away. Nina smiled as she climbed into the truck. "Thanks for coming, Tom. I told you, I'll always be there for you," I replied. "Are you upset that someone else offered to help me?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yes and no," I admitted. "I want people to see how amazing you are, but it bothers me when they hit on you." She looked at me with wide eyes. "Tom, I didn't do anything wrong." "I know. I was just answering your question," I said quickly. Then I added, "Besides, I don't own you." "You told them I was your fiancé." "Why?" she asked, but I didn't answer, just kept driving toward the junkyard. "Why are we here, Tom?" she asked, confused. "I'll give you a couple $100 for your old car," I said. "Get your personal stuff out, and we'll sort the rest later." "What am I supposed to drive?" she asked, surprised. "We'll talk about that later. For now, let's hurry and pick up the kids." After getting $300 for the car and grabbing Lily's car seat, we headed back to the house. Once we were home, I opened the garage. "You can drive my old car," I said, motioning to it. "It's got low mileage. I barely used it since I got it after Kate's accident." Noah's eyes lit up when they returned. "We got a new car, and it's way nicer than Mom's old one," he shouted excitedly. "Tom, I'll pay you for the car." "How much do you want?" Nina asked, her tone serious. "Just drive it," I said with a shrug. "I'll keep it in my name and cover the insurance. It'll save you money." "What if we don't stay together?" "What if I have to move?" she asked, sounding hesitant. "Are you thinking of moving?" I asked, surprised. "No, I don't know what I'd do if you kicked us out," she said softly. I couldn't believe we were having our first real argument, and over the car of all things. "Nina, I promise you'll always have a car. If it makes you feel better, I'll put it in writing. I just want you to be safe." She kissed me then, and it felt natural, like everything was falling into place. Lily giggled from across the room. "Mom just kissed Uncle Tom," she announced with a laugh. Nina chuckled and replied, "It's a thank you kiss for letting us use his car." "No," I said, smiling at both of them. "It's your car now. She kissed me because it's hers." Nina kissed me again, and we all laughed together. "Okay, everyone, time to get ready for dinner," I said, clapping my hands together. "Should we cook, or should Mom drive us to McDonald's in her new car?" "McDonald's," the kids shouted in unison. It was a quiet Friday at the store, and Nina was working when my kids, Jake, Emily, and Sarah, dropped by. Jake didn't waste any time. "Dad, we need to talk," he said. "Can we go to your house for a bit?" Emily asked. "Sure. I'll meet you there in a few minutes," I replied, already knowing what this was about. I'd been expecting this conversation, and I was ready. When I got home, my kids were already gathered in the living room, waiting for me. Jake spoke first. Dad, this is about Nina and her kids. Seriously, Jake? You drove 2 hours just for this? What has Nina done to make you dislike her so much? I asked, trying to keep my cool. It's not that we dislike her, Emily chimed in, but 1 minute you're helping her, and the next, she and her kids are living here. And now your car is gone, did you give it to Nina? As my kids, I owe you an explanation, I said, keeping my voice calm, but I'm really disappointed in all of you. Dad, I think Nina is taking advantage of you, Jake continued. You're lonely, and she's filling that void. You've fallen in love, and now her kids are all taken care of. That's crap, Jake, Sarah cut in. I know Nina better than you. She loves Dad, and he loves her. I'm here to support them. I clenched my fists, trying to control my temper. Jake, if you weren't my son, I'd knock you out of that chair. What should I have done? Just hand her some money and tell her to figure it out on her own. I did what I thought was right. Dad, are you saying you haven't slept with her? Emily asked bluntly. No, we haven't. And not that it's any of your business, I replied, but I'm thinking about asking her to marry me. What? Jake exclaimed. You barely know her. She's got 3 kids, and she's carrying more baggage than you realize. You all have your own lives, and I've found someone I care about. Why are you so against it? I asked, frustration rising. Dad, even if you love her, are you really ready to raise 3 young kids again? Jake asked. They're not even your biological children. I love those kids, Jake. They remind me of when you were little. Lily sits on my lap and hugs me just like you two used to. I can make a difference in their lives. Jake shook his head in disbelief. You're seeing this through rose-colored glasses. Do you really want to spend the next 20 years raising someone else's kids? I turned to Emily. What do you think? Do they have to be my biological kids for me to love them? Emily hesitated. I love you, and you'll always be my father. But, I don't know if I could raise someone else's kids. I understand, I said. But would you still love me if I wasn't your biological father? Of course, you're my dad. She said, her voice firm. But what does that have to do with raising Nina's kids? I sighed deeply, realizing it was time to tell them the truth. Hold on a second. I need to show you something. I walked over to a drawer and pulled out the DNA test results I had kept hidden for so long. Your mom and I kept some secrets. It might be a mistake to show you this, but you need to understand why this matters to me. I handed the results to Emily and Jake. They both looked confused. What is this? Emily asked. These are your DNA test results, I explained. They show that you and Jake share the same biological parents, but Sarah's results are different. Only one of her parents is the same as yours. Sarah started to cry, her voice trembling. Are you saying you're not my biological father? No, Sarah, I said gently. I'm not Jake's or Emily's biological father either. They all stared at me, completely stunned. What? Jake finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. You've always been my dad, Emily said, tears filling her eyes. Why didn't you tell us before? You are my children, regardless of biology, I said firmly. It's love that makes a family, not just blood. Jake swallowed hard. Are you going to tell us about our biological father? I plan to, I said. But first, I need you to know that I've always loved you as my own. I took a deep breath before continuing. Jack Miller was your biological father, Jake. He was Emily's too. Your mother and I were married, and we were happy, until she confessed that Jack was your real father. I was heartbroken, I continued, but I couldn't walk away from the two of you. We stayed together, and then Sarah was born. She was definitely mine. Jake looked at me, his voice shaking. Dad, why did you take the kidney test if you knew you weren't my biological father? I hoped and prayed I was a match for you. You were my son, and I would have given you my kidney in a heartbeat. Emily's voice was soft as she asked, did you know all this before Jake went to the hospital? Yes, I said. Your mom had already told me the truth, so there were no surprises. I knew what the results would be when I took the test. Sarah wiped away her tears. So, you've known all along, and you still raised us like we were your own. Yes, because I love you, I said. Nothing can change that. Jake, who had been quiet for a while, finally spoke. I'm sorry, Dad. I was thinking more about us than about you and Nina. I just want you to be happy. I get it, Jake, I replied. And I understand that part of this might be about inheritance. But don't worry, you'll all be treated fairly in my will. What hurts is that you haven't shown much compassion for Nina and her kids. Emily hugged me tightly. I don't care what any test says. You'll always be my dad. I hugged her back, feeling the weight lift a little, and was about to pull Sarah into an embrace when I heard a car pull up outside. Nina had arrived. Looks like we're all going out for dinner, I said with a smile. Unless, of course, you want to tell Nina the real reason you're here. Nina walked in, greeting everyone warmly. Hey, what brings you all here? Sarah, thinking quickly, came up with a cover. It's my last day off before I head back, so we thought we'd all go out for dinner. Great. Nina smiled. Let me change out of my uniform, and we'll head out. As she left the room, I turned to my kids. You're welcome to talk to Nina whenever you're ready, but just know, I'm happy, and that's what matters. Lily ran up to Jake and hugged him, her small arms wrapping around his legs. Hi, Jake. I like you. Jake glanced over at me, finally understanding what I meant about these kids becoming a part of our lives. Ethan, ever curious, turned to Emily and asked, did you bring your kids so we can play? We're learning to share our toys better. Emily smiled. No, they're at home. But maybe you can come visit after Christmas. Can I, Uncle Tom? Ethan asked eagerly. I've never been to their house. We'll see, Ethan, I replied, smiling at him. There's still a couple of weeks before then. Meanwhile, Sarah was chatting with Noah when, out of nowhere, he blurted out, we bought a new car, and Mom kissed Uncle Tom. All eyes turned toward me, but before I could say anything, Nina swooped in. Yes, Ethan, I kissed him, twice, for letting us use the car. We're using it to go to dinner now. Come on, kids, back in the car. Uncle Tom's driving, so you all sit in the back. After dinner, Jake pulled me aside. I'm sorry, Dad. I shouldn't have doubted you. It's okay to wonder, Jake, I said. But next time, let's talk it through instead of assuming the worst. Jake smiled, and we shared a moment of understanding. Later, I had a similar conversation with Emily. I wanted all my kids to know I'd always be there for them, no matter what. The next day, Sarah asked if I could babysit while she and Nina went shopping together. I agreed and handed them some extra money for their trip. I also wanted to buy bikes for Nina's kids, knowing they'd be safe to ride in our neighborhood. As usual, Nina was too proud to ask for more money, happy to be able to provide for her kids after selling her old car. That afternoon, I borrowed Nina's car and took the kids Christmas shopping. Remember, I told them, we're shopping for your mom. Each of you has $20 to spend on her. At first, they gravitated toward the more expensive items, so I took them to a kid-friendly store. The clerk helped guide them to gifts within their budget. Ethan spotted a unicorn toy that cost $25. I'll give you the extra $5 if you wash my truck, I said with a grin. Ethan was absolutely thrilled and immediately snatched up the unicorn. Noah picked out DVDs, Titanic and Shrek, and I helped him cover the extra cost. Lily, on the other hand, had a tough time finding just the right gift. "None of these smell like Mom," she whispered, looking a bit defeated. I quietly tipped off the saleswoman, who suggested White Diamond's perfume. Lily's face lit up when she found out it cost exactly $20. The saleswoman, catching on, pretended it was a special deal just for her. Beaming with pride, Lily bought it. After the shopping trip, the kids hid their gifts in my office, and they even left a Christmas card on Sarah's bed, thanking her for the new luggage she had given them. When Sarah got home and saw the card, she was overjoyed. The weeks leading up to Christmas flew by in a blur of work, school activities, and getting everything ready for the holiday. For the first time in 3 years, we decorated a Christmas tree, and it brought back a warmth and joy I hadn't felt in a long time. Sarah left for England, and we made plans to visit Emily and Jake the day after Christmas. On Christmas morning, the kids were over the moon. They tore through presents and stockings, their excitement filling the house. Nina was visibly touched by the gifts her kids had chosen: movies from Noah, a unicorn from Ethan, and the perfume from Lily. "Mommy, that was the last bottle, and I had just enough money," Lily said proudly. Nina smiled, noticing the $50 price tag but choosing not to say anything. I had hidden bikes for the kids around the house, and when they discovered them, their excitement was infectious. Lily and Noah got bikes with training wheels, though Noah was determined to ride without them, just like Ethan. As the kids played outside, I handed Nina a large box. Inside were several cozy nightgowns. Laughing, she asked, "What made you buy these?" "This comes with it," I said, handing her a smaller box. When she opened it and saw the engagement ring, her eyes filled with tears. "Why, Tom? Why now?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Because I love you, and I want you and the kids to be with me, always." "So, is the answer yes?" Her response completely took me by surprise. "Tom, the answer is no," she said softly. "But please, hear me out." I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. "Okay. I'm listening." "I love you," she began, "but we've only known each other for a few months. After the holidays, things are going to settle down, and I need to be sure we're doing the right thing. So, here's what I'm thinking: I want us to live together as a family, but I'll rent rooms from you and pay $200 a week. Let's give it 6 months and see if this is really what we both want. If it doesn't work, we can figure something else out." She handed the ring back to me and kissed me gently. "All I'm asking for is a little more time." She hinted at keeping the nightgown, suggesting we take things slow and make sure marriage was truly what we both wanted. I could live with that. I hoped it would only bring us closer. The kids spent the entire day playing with their toys. Despite the cold weather, they insisted on riding their new bikes, so Nina and I bundled up and watched them from the porch. In the afternoon, Sarah called from England to share the exciting news of her engagement. We congratulated her, wished her a Merry Christmas, and then spent the rest of the evening watching A Christmas Story together. Before bed, the kids hugged me and said, "Thanks for the best Christmas ever." Hearing that warmed my heart. Later that night, I could smell Nina's perfume drifting down the hall before she appeared at my door in her new nightgown. "Tom," she said softly, "I love you, but we need to wait before getting married. Can we start tonight, though? Will you make love to me?" She smiled, and we shared an unforgettable night together. In the morning, I found her asleep with Lily, and I decided to get up early to make breakfast before we headed over to Emily's for Christmas dinner. Jake and his family were already there when we arrived, and they welcomed Nina and her kids with open arms, including them in the gift exchange. It made me feel incredibly blessed to see everyone together like that. Later, Jake pulled me aside. "Dad, did you propose to Nina?" Jake asked, pulling me aside after the wedding. "I did, but she turned me down," I admitted. "She thinks it's too soon." Jake looked surprised. "I can't believe that. She loves you, Dad." She does, I agreed. But she wants to be sure. And honestly, I respect that. We're giving it time. Life carried on, and as time passed, we grew closer and more like a family. Nina and I shared the cooking duties, managed expenses through a joint account, and discussed any major purchases together. We lived like a married couple in every way but the name, and our love only deepened. Sarah noticed how close we'd become, but she didn't say much about it. When her wedding day was approaching, she asked Nina to be her maid of honor. Nina was so touched that she burst into tears of joy. As the wedding day neared, I found myself reflecting on my relationship with Nina. I adored her kids, and they loved me just as much. On the day of the wedding, I had a surprise in store for her since we hadn't talked about marriage since Christmas. Dressed in my tuxedo, I proudly walked Sarah down the aisle, tears of joy welling in both our eyes. Lily's excited voice rang out, "Aunt Sarah looks like a princess." The guests smiled and laughed, adding to the warmth of the moment. As I sat down after giving Sarah away, I was overwhelmed with gratitude, for my family, my daughters, my new son-in-law, Nina, and the kids. At the reception, Nina joined me for the first dance. "I love you, Nina," I whispered as we swayed to the music. "I love you too, Tom," she replied softly, her eyes sparkling. Then she added, "Are you really serious about this?" "I mean it," I said, and she kissed me, publicly showing her love for the first time. Later, it was time for the bouquet toss. Jake playfully nudged Nina to join in, reminding her that she was technically still single. When Sarah threw the bouquet, it sailed perfectly into Nina's hands. Then came the garter toss, and Ryan grinned as he handed it to me, saying, "This belongs to my father-in-law." Nina sat down, and with a playful grin, I knelt before her. I slid the garter up her leg, and as I reached her hip, I pulled out a small box with a wedding ring inside. "Nina," I said, still on one knee, "after 6 more months of being surrounded by family and love, will you marry me?" The room fell completely silent as everyone waited. Lily stepped forward, seeing her mother's tearful eyes, and whispered, "Say yes, Mommy." With tears streaming down her face, Nina smiled and said, "Tom, I love you with all my heart. Yes, I'll marry you." The room erupted into cheers. Sarah ran over, hugging Nina as they both cried together. There wasn't a dry eye in the place, including mine, as I kissed my soon-to-be wife. Now happily married, Nina left her job at Frank's Diner to help me run the gas station. She's a natural, and she's made the workplace feel more like a family. We're even considering adoption, though we're taking our time with that decision. Lily already calls me Daddy, and the boys switch between calling me Daddy and Uncle Tom, probably just to confuse their friends. Looking back, I sometimes wonder how life might have turned out if I'd known about Jack Miller sooner or if Lori's accident hadn't happened. Life is fragile, and the weight of past mistakes still haunts me now and then. But as I sit on the couch, snuggled up with my new wife, watching our blended family laugh and play together, I know we've built something beautiful. Watching Titanic, one of Noah's Christmas gifts, has even become a new family tradition. Well, for most of us anyway, Lily always falls asleep halfway through.